Amount of trauma and the violence that these people have been exposed to is remarkable and unprecedented.
Israel could not do the genocide that it's doing against Palestinians right now without the United States of America.
Polio has been almost eradicated and it's coming back. And now the doctors and the parents and the families are seeing the children getting infected again, and that can cause severe neurological diseases.
Without the political cover of the United States and very real physical bombs that are being used to kill Palestinians right now.
To me, as a medical doctor, this is a medical emergency of the highest degree.
There's a hope that Kamala Harris will understand that things have changed and the occupation against Palestinians has always been wrong. I feel it is a dishonor to our history, to our people, to our religion, to not oppose a genocide, regardless of who is doing it and who it's being done to.
Despite the massive outrage that we're seeing across the world on what's happening in Gaza, the Israeli forces and their actions continue. There might be a temporary ceasefire, but that's only for polio vaccinations. And what's unfortunate over here is that there are cases of polio that we're now seeing in Gaza Strip. To speak a little more on this, I'm being joined by somebody who is a practicing medical professional, Dr. Karama. She's a doctor herself, a Palestinian who has been very, very closely in touch with many medical workers in the Gaza Strip, will be telling us exactly what's happening on the ground, not just in terms of the cases of polio, but also how dire the situation is. Thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Karama. And then we also have Eli Gerzon, who is a local leader from the Jewish Voice for Peace Action. All of them have been, in a way, associated with Stop the Bombing movement, the campaign, the movement, seeking the U.S. administration to really look at what's happening in Gaza and stop the bombing. It's a long introduction, and I'm doing this because a lot of people don't understand why we keep going back to people who are working on the ground and with people on the ground in Gaza. Dr. Karama, if I could come to you first. You're a medical practitioner yourself, and you're in touch with people on the ground. First, tell us what's the situation when it comes to polio cases there, and the fact that it needed a ceasefire, a temporary ceasefire, to get the vaccinations in.
Thank you so much, Geeta. Thank you, Eli, for being here with me. We see each other a lot in a lot of actions. So I'm a neurologist. I'm a pediatric neurologist. Polio is an infectious disease that can spread very fast. Unfortunately, it has been eradicated almost by 99% in the world because of a massive vaccination program throughout the world that is supported by the WHO and local governments. The vaccination rates in Palestine, including Gaza, are very high normally. However, for polio vaccine, you have to vaccinate very early in life during the first year. And without the vaccine, polio comes back. And over the past 2 months, the polio virus has been detected in the water, in the sewage water. And that is a natural result of the massive bombardment of water pumps in Gaza and the cutting of the water supply. So the population is living in a severe scarcity of water. I heard something like 3 liters per person, which is much, much lower than the recommended number of liters per person, which is above 150. So, you can imagine that there is an extreme case of perfect conditions for the spread of infections. Polio has been almost eradicated and it's coming back. And now the doctors and the parents and the families are seeing the children getting infected again, and that can cause severe neurological diseases. So you know, it's a
Dr.
medical emergency.
Karame, you are in touch with doctors on the ground, medical aid workers on the ground. How difficult is the situation for them in handling not just the polio cases, but handling the influx uh, of patients who are being treated for with war wounds, so to say, in terms of their homes being destroyed, being bombed, and they're coming with very, very severe injuries. So, what's the situation on the ground, and how bad is it? Because we do hear a lot of people and a lot of leaders talk about aid reaching Gaza. So, what kind of aid and what kind of medical aid are we talking about here?
So the situation at baseline is not very good in Gaza because of the siege, and with the attacks on the healthcare systems in Gaza that basically rendered almost every single hospital, 36 hospital, all of them have been affected by bombardment, by siege, by reduction of water and fuel. The situation is extremely dire. Over 500 healthcare workers have been killed. The doctors who are, and the nurses and the healthcare workers in the hospitals and the killing are being targeted. We have a campaign for medical professionals saying not a target, because medical professionals should never be targeted, because killing one medical professional affects the whole population. So not only are they working in hospitals and clinics that have been completely destroyed, but they are also being targeted, their families are being killed. So the amount of trauma and the violence that these people have been exposed to is remarkable and unprecedented. And when I say unprecedented in the whole world for the past decades. So we are seeing the most severe medical crisis in the universe right now. The doctors that I'm in touch with are steadfast. They go to work no matter what. They see the patients. Some of the hospitals are being used as shelters for people who are displaced. Sure. The hospitals are not functioning. They are holding ground for people coming for safety, and they are still bombarded. And there is no supplies. There's no gauze. There's no cleaning supplies, no antiseptics. The Israelis are putting a lot of restrictions on aid. Anything that is considered dual aid, like, for example, wheelchairs and crutches, forceps, are being not allowed. So I cannot,
not even wheelchairs.
Not even wheelchairs. I cannot say it enough that they are working under impossible conditions.
Dr. Karame, I'll come back to you because you're in conversation with doctors on the ground. Tell us maybe some of the conversations that you've had. What are they really saying? Because not enough voices are being heard out here. So maybe through you, we'll get to know what the doctors are telling you. But Ellie, if I could come to you, not another bomb coalition. We have seen a lot of you come together, and it's in the United States of America that we've seen the most number of protests against what the US administration is doing. It's actually quite inspiring, not just people like you, but also students in various universities, unexpectedly. So we've not seen so much in other parts of the world, including India, might I add. But we've seen that in the United States of America, but falling on deaf ears, is it?
Thank you so much for having us, first of all, and thank you for acknowledging how many of us are protesting. I've been very politically active as an organizer for over 10 years. I've never seen so many people, mobilize. But what I can say is we in the United States have the greatest responsibility to protest this, because Israel could not do the genocide that it's doing against Palestinians right now without the United States of America, without the political cover of the United States and very real physical bombs that are being used to kill Palestinians right now are made in the United States of America and basically given to Israel as military aid. Is it falling on deaf ears? Well, what I can say, for one thing, our campaign used to focus on ceasefire. say ceasefire, say ceasefire. But then the Democrats came up with this great idea. Oh, let's say ceasefire, but not mean it at all. And that is what President Biden, that's what Vice President Harris have been doing. They've been saying, we support a ceasefire, we support ceasefire negotiations. Israel is engaged in bad faith negotiations where they change the goalpost every time. So we need to be very specific now and stop sending bombs to this genocidal regime. And so far, we have not gotten any indication from President Biden or candidate Kamala Harris that they will do that. So yes, so far it does seem to be falling on deaf ears.
Well, Ali, I'll talk about the politics of it also, but just coming to who you actually are, a Jew yourself, representing the Jewish voice, the Jewish community. And
don't put too much pressure on me.
In most of the conversations that we have or that we see political leaders in the United States have, particularly the Republican camp or former President Trump, he might be quite straight about what he wants and what he doesn't. But the fact is that if you're not standing with Israel, you're anti-Jew or anti-Semitic.
Yeah, absolutely.
How does that argument really hold? I mean, there are people who are very, very faithful to their religion, to their faith, and yet are protesting the bombing. They do not feel they do not feel one with Israel or Israeli government's actions. How do you explain this? How do you explain yourself? You anti-national, you?
Sure. I mean, you're Jewish. How could you not support the Jewish state? I would turn that around and say, our people famously experienced a genocide. I lost 44 members of my family in the Holocaust. My grandfather was a Dutch Jew who was extremely lucky to survive. And so I'm lucky to be here. And I feel it is a dishonor to our history, to our people, to our religion, to not oppose a genocide, regardless of who is doing it and who it's being done to. And I think it's really important to make clear that Israel could not do what it's doing. The United States could not do what it's doing without demonizing and dehumanizing Muslim people, Arab people, Palestinian people. At Jewish Voice for Peace Action, we believe that everyone is equal and that Jews are most safe when everyone is safe. That when we strive for equality, when we strive for an end to bigotry, that the Jewish people will be safe when the Palestinian people are safe.
Dr. Karama, coming to you, conversations with people on the ground, what are they saying? How does a temporary ceasefire really hold if there's nothing in Gaza when it comes to malnutrition in children, the aid not reaching, severe water shortage, severe sanitation issues? What are they really telling you? Any conversation that you can remember and you can tell us?
I'm extremely impressed by my colleagues in Gaza. They are so resilient and they do not give up on their patients. I cannot, it's very difficult for me to imagine. I work in one of the biggest hospitals in Boston, and if we have one person who's out sick for a cold, we all struggle to cover one person. So when the hospitals are destroyed, the supplies are not there, they are being creative, and they just, figure out small things to do to help their patients, but they never give up on their patients. So they have created medical tents, a table, some, maybe a stethoscope, maybe some equipments where the nurse, the doctor come and they see people who come to them. The lines to see doctors are extremely long. There are no medications. Patients who have hypertension, who have diabetes are dying at an alarming rate because they are out of their medications. Stroke patients are not being treated at all. They are left to die. So the destruction of the medical system is increasing the mortality and contributing to this genocide in a very remarkable way, because this is not just death by bombardment. There is death from diseases that are not controlled, death from infections, and death because there is no medical care to stop a wound from bleeding, or, to take care of an amputation. To me, as a medical doctor, this is a medical emergency of the highest degree for every single medical professional in the universe. If we do not stand up together and support other medical professionals anywhere in the world, especially now in Gaza, I do not think we deserve to be called doctors, nurses, or medical professionals. So,
or leaders, or leaders, or world leaders, or superpowers, or
yes.
superpowers. The fact that you have the United States of America keeping quiet. Let me get to the politics of it. US elections round the corner. You're seeing a lot of statements that are coming, and it is kind of scary because they have taken positions on what they're going to do, not going to do, irrespective. In the garb of saying Israel has the right to defend itself, which is quite all right, quite true. You can stay with that. But without red lines, without saying where is that red line that Israel is not allowed to cross, which, if you ask me, Israel crossed long, long ago. So what were the politics over here? How is Israel going to impact Gaza, especially with the considerations of elections right now?
Sure. So, I mean, when you say the word red line, Biden said invading Rafah was a red line. Israel said, oh, we're just going to invade it for 2 weeks and then we'll be done. It's been 3 or 4 months now. Okay. And Israel is losing. Their country is collapsing. But we have a president who is very racist. And he is holding on to this idea that you must support Israel at all costs. And there is a hope that somebody like Kamala Harris doesn't have particularly a great record on this, but she's more of a mainstream Democrat. Biden is especially terrible on Palestine. But there's a hope that Kamala Harris will understand that things have changed and the occupation against Palestinians has always been wrong, but that the public really understands that, is really motivated by that, and that there are millions of people who will hesitate or completely refuse to vote for this administration, for Kamala Harris, unless she makes real material changes. We saw Biden won just by sometimes thousands of votes, tens of thousands of votes in some of these swing states. A few votes can make a huge difference.
You think in the battleground states that the Democrats, if they really take a position in Gaza on the Israel-Hamas war, you think it will tilt it to Kamala's favor?
Kamala herself is saying at rallies, this is going to be a close race. This is going to be a close race. The polls are very clear. What will help it become less of a close race, what will help Kamala win, is taking a clear stance on ending this genocide. And the way you end it is an arms embargo. Israel will not listen to anything else besides a material change. And that's what Kamala Harris needs to do if she wants to win this election.
Right. I know Karame has to leave soon, so my final questions to both of you. Ellie, to you first. We see the outrage. We see massive outrage by the West when it comes to the Russia-Ukraine war. Deaths are deaths, I know. And you have to look at what's happening in Ukraine as well. But the outrage is not commensurate with the deaths in Gaza, or for that matter, what's happening in Afghanistan. Why this entire difference when it comes to this part of the world vis-a-vis that part of the world where people look like you?
Yeah, absolutely. Racism. Again, this would not be possible without racism. The Democrats Kamala Harris talks about Israel has a right to defend itself. Israel has a right to security. Palestinians have a right to security also. She talks about Palestinians have a right to self-determination sometime in the future. No, they have a right to safety right now. And absolutely, racism is a huge part of it. We need to stop demonizing Muslims. We need to stop demonizing Arabs, people of color in general. That's absolutely central to this. And again, as a Jew, I care about people in general, and I know that Jews will be safest when all are safe. I do want to give a quick shout out to, I'm also a member of Arlington for Palestine. So this is just one suburb in Boston. So many groups are active. So many people are mobilizing. And I just wanted to say, many of the people in Arlington for Palestine are Indian themselves, actually, Indian Americans. And so just people from all walks of life are active on this. And I do hope more people in India itself will become active on this. And I really appreciate you having us.
Ellie, before I go to Karama again, just one last word. Kamala Harris, in every question that has been asked to her, including her first interview after picking up the presidential ticket, the question asked to her was about Gaza, and she was quite evasive. She said, we want a ceasefire, but she did not say that they will stop sending bombs, weapons to Israel. So that's clarity there. We know exactly what she's coming with. There is no change. It is going to be the same, because if they're going to weaponize Israel, then there is no conversation on a ceasefire or negotiations for a resolution.
Yes, we need more than empty words. We need action. And again, I believe that there is real potential for Kamala Harris to understand that she needs to do things differently, that the politics have changed. For decades, you could support Israel unequivocally and get away with it. But frankly, Biden is worse than somebody like Reagan, somebody like George Bush, somebody like Obama. He is especially bad, and we're hoping that Kamala Harris will finally be especially good, and she needs to show it very, very soon.
Dr. Karame, last word to you. Do you see the outrage, the discrimination, even in outrage in the West, when it comes to other wars like Russia, Ukraine, as opposed to the Israel-Hamas or the situation in Gaza?
I think we live in a lopsided world where, people who are speaking up against genocide are being criminalized and sanctioned and silenced. And we see that in the student campuses. We see that in the workplaces. If you speak up against the genocide in Gaza, you might lose your job, or you might lose your, you might lose your support system in any employment opportunity. So we're not only seeing a difference in the quality of outrage, we're seeing silencing of the outrage. And I think we should all speak up no matter what. We are humans, and we should fight together for other humans, no matter where, whether it's Ukraine, whether it's Sudan, whether it's Congo, whether it's Palestine. And before we leave, I also want to point everyone's attention to the West Bank. It is and East Jerusalem. Absolutely. It is not just Gaza that is being bombarded. Right now, we're seeing Israeli forces bombing refugee camps inside the West Bank. Where does that end? I do not know. Israel has no red line. And if we do not speak up, we're just letting more and more people perish.
You made a very important point. Every voice that has spoken for Gaza, for Palestinians, quite a few of them have had a very, very heavy price to pay. They lose jobs. They're silenced through that, through economic squeeze over here. But many of you have not given up, and you are continuing with the not just the outreach, but voicing concerns when it comes to Gaza, holding rallies, movements, campaigns. On that note, just thanking you for being what you are and doing what you guys are doing. Thank you so much for joining me over here on India Today Global and sharing not just what's happening on the ground, but also what's happening in the United States of America. Ellie, Dr. Karama, thank you so much.
Thank you, Geeta. Thank you, Eli. Yeah, thanks a lot.